It was nothing to start with. Just dark and damp and cold. And then, way up above, there was a voice. Voices, in fact. They were so big and so deep, it was hard to tell what language they were speaking, let alone what they said. But it must have been Gork and Mork. And they were fighting, which is fine, because that's what they like doing best. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Massive, rumbling impacts that made the dark thunder that would have knocked me off my feet if I hadn't had any kind of presence. And then a spark, a tiny little mote of green, bright and hungry, drifting down through many, many, many tusk lengths till it touched the floor of where I was. The green spread out from the tiny point, rippling in big, bright circles, and pooling in spots that spread circles of their own. It spread faster and faster until everything was covered in it, as far as I could see. Now it was lit up. I could see I was in some kind of cavern, or rather, a big twisting mess of caverns, like the cells in a hive of sugar gits, but massive. The walls were meaty, I reckon is the word, damp and red and crinkly, like the folds in a brain, which I'd seen enough of in my brief life to know well enough. As the green gathered on them, they changed. They started sprouting fungus, molds and slimes at first, the sort of stuff you would eat when there's a dust storm. And the orcs have had all the good grub, but then murkworts and biocaps and huge complicated things like nothing that grew on Urk. And just like it is outside of Holy Visions, whenever the fungus grew, so did the other green things. Squiglets first, the kind so small you can only see them as mean little specks digging into your armpits. Then squigs as big as talon tips and fists and heads. Next came snotlings, who are to grots what we are to orcs. Crawling and yipping and scrapping with each other in big, writhing piles. Everywhere there were snotlings eating squigs, and squigs eating snotlings, and with every jaw snap, gnash, and gnaw, the green grew brighter and more alive. Then there were grots, swarms of grots, and they got straight to work lashing together meager little tools from squig sinew and capwood, and bullying the snots into working too, faster than I could keep up with. They beat the fungal jungle back and started building farms and drops and brew huts and barracks. They were just in time for the first orcs, who were crawling their way out of their grow holes now, and were hungry already. The orcs kept coming, and they kept getting bigger, until even the runts among them were as big as the war bosses on Urk. And above it all, way up, on what might have been the cavern roof or might have been infinity, the stars were coming out. More stars than every mech on Urk could have counted in a lifetime. And every one of them, bright, angry, beautiful green. I was so distracted by the stars, I didn't even see the squig off. It was a brilliant thing, a horrible thing. As big as a battle wagon it was, and it made the skinny, sag-throated beast raised by Urk snakebite herders look pathetic. It nearly smashed me to mush with its foot, but I didn't live to 3 years old by not being able to roll out of the way of a stomp Mork snickered fast. And once I was on my feet, I followed the beast. I don't know why, but it felt right. Soon there was a whole herd of squigoths, lumbering along at something like a gallop, and barging each other with enough force to flatten forts. I ran along with them, through the untamed garden, and I didn't care if they stamped me flat. because it felt like fear wasn't something worth feeling in this place. Up above now, where the green stars shone, there were warriors, huge orcs, perfect orcs. Everyone bigger than a clan chief and rippling with green light. I don't know how I knew, but they were orcs as they were meant to be. They glowed bright enough to outshine the stars. And as they strode through the sky, I could feel the gods above them, grinning down in violent pride. Then clashes and booms and roars started coming from up ahead. The giants were wading into a scrap. It was hard to see what was going on, given I was looking up from between the flanks of the galloping squigoths. But it was a big fight. Kept getting bigger, and I think the orcs won. Surely they couldn't have lost. But then, when the noises of the fight faded away, the presence of the gods did too. It was like the whole cavern got cold and dark again, like it had been to start with. The squigoths stopped in their tracks, and so did every other thing in the whole of the Great Green. It was like everything was lost. Suddenly, looking around and wondering what to do now. Of course, they started fighting. It was a frenzy above and below, from the giants trading punches like comet strikes in the sky, to the snotlings wrapping skinny claws around each other's necks down below. And with no gods to bang everyone's heads together and tell them to pack it in, it went on until the whole place was like a butcher's tent, and there'd been enough murders for the survivors to have some space. It weren't peaceful then, but it weren't a bloodbath neither. 'Cause all the really hard things, like the orcs in the sky, were dead. And it went on for ages like that. There were orcs still, but they were nothing like the colossal fighters who had been there before. And they were all stuck down on the cavern floor. Watching them was a bit like watching raindrops get swiped away by a truck's hatch wipers. Every time one got big enough to seem like it might make it up to the sky, all the others nearby ganged up and beat it into shreds. So none of them got as big as they should have been. Until one did, that is. It wasn't even that big when it got attacked, but it promptly demolished every orc that came at it, delivering headbutts like point-blank cannon strikes, and pulling any survivors into line to fight alongside it. As more and more enemies flooded in, the fight got larger, and so did the pile of bodies in front of it. Green lightning started to strike all around it, and soon that body pile reached all the way to the sky. Seeing this, the new giant began climbing the mountain of the dead towards the stars. With every step, the winter grew more bulky, more vigorous, and soon the cavern started glowing bright again. The stars swelled, and I knew that Gork and Mork was back somehow, or that they'd never been gone, but had just lost interest for a while, until there'd been something worth looking at again. Soon, the champion reached the top of the buddy pile, where the stars had grown so big, there was no black left between them, and it stood there for a moment, like it was thinking, looking up at that titan, which had horns now, as well as loads of arms bearing all sorts of different guns and choppers. I was terrified, but I also knew what joy was for the first time. And then the titan looked back down at me. There were spaceships flitting across the green sea of its one good eye, looking like tiny bingits. And as the full weight of the glare bore down on me, I thanked the gods that they'd let me die like this. But the giant didn't kill me. It curled a finger big enough to flick a moon into a planet, and it beckoned me, and it turned and stepped into glorious infinite green. leaving only flames in its boot prints.